Okay, so BeastCoast is a hip hop collective full of artists straight from Pro Era, The Underachievers, Flatbush Zombies, all hailing from New York, all with their own distinct projects. Now, the group formed back in 2012, but they didn't actually make their own album until just recent. Escape from New York is the very first album that is put together by BeastCoast. BeastCoast is a collective that is comprised of members Joey Badass, Flatbush Zombies, The Underachievers, Nyck, Kirk, Powers Pleasant, along with Zombie Juice on some of the production. Dirty Sanchez, there's an endless list. Pretty much any 20-something New York rapper, he's probably in BeastCoast. Fans of East Coast hip-hop have been waiting for this moment for years. I mean, I can remember going back to the 2014 Project Clockwork Indigo EP with Flatbush Zombies and The Underachievers. I mean, people have been begging for Pro Era to collaborate with Flatbush Zombies and The Underachievers. Start this review off by saying that the second half of this project, in my opinion, is where things really kick off in a more consistently uphill way. I'll get to the beginning after and discuss my issues with this project and where I think it fell short. But first, let's get to the highlights.
Nearly underrated. Top 5? Nah. Nigga that me. We could go there, we could talk about it.
Tracks just like Rubberband, I feel, is exactly where BeastCoast shines. They have these moments of just such extreme chemistry with one another, like they're completely reiterating each other's points over this extremely immense, intense production. The confidence that I hear from them as a listener that they seem to have in one another to complete the remainder of the track, even though they've got short verses, to me just shows the amount of chemistry that they have with one another. It's like they're constantly alley-ooping the ball to one another. Despite there being so many members on this project, I think each of these members has like kind of their own distinct personality. I'm never confused as to who's rapping and when. They're harmonizing, their vocal inflections, their cadences all seem to be vocal attributes that are native to them. So you always know when a Zombie Juice is rapping, you always know when a Joey Badass is rapping, you always know when a Michi Darko is rapping, and so on. Where I think BeastCoast really shines with this project as well is when they're coupled with production that's as equally as underground and sound as grimy as they can be. It seems to emphasize this idea that you're entering a territory that only the group themselves are allowed into, which is why when I hear the very soft yet haunting keys on a track like Puke and the way they greet each other on a track like Left Hand, I feel like I'm not even allowed to be listening to this project. The flows are incredibly intense on this project. Listen to the opening track where they deliver 7 verses in under 4 minutes on a track where the first 30 seconds is nothing but beat. CJ Fly completely steals it for me with his flow on this track during the very hypnotic wind chime-like instrumental switch. Joey Badass on Desperado talks about not wanting to have met his idols because they ended up only becoming his rivals.
Wish I never met my idols. Meet them and they all turn rivals. Hard souls coming for the top.
Desperado is another very equally intense and militant-like song. Despite its catchiness and them experimenting with different harmonies on this track vocally, I think it just works. And despite the melodic trap tropes of a track like Coast and Clear, I actually really enjoyed that track. It reminds me of something that Nav would be on, but here we actually have artists who can carry the track.
In the air, pop out, make them all stare. You a cop out, you should grow a pair.
So we do have some tracks on this album that I really enjoy and I could see people having in their playlist for the next 5 years. But I did mention how the second leg of this project, in my opinion, is significantly stronger or at least more consistent than the first half, many times because of one of these reasons. It feels like too many roommates in like a 2-bedroom apartment. The feeling of too many chefs being in this overcrowded kitchen can make their verses go either one of 2 ways. Them wanting to cram so many different artists onto songs that are generally under 4 minutes forces their verses to be short. This causes them to very briefly take a surface level analysis of their own perspective, or it forces them to follow the narrative of whatever the track is pushing. And sometimes the message isn't anything that deep in the first place. Take a track like Problemz, where it seems like as opposed to just saying, hey, you can't escape life, it took 6 rappers and 6 verses for them to essentially come to the idea that you can't fix everything. And I feel like one of the reasons we get such lyrical bare content on this project sometimes is because of how many artists are forced onto the one track. I don't know how impactful you can be with a hot 4 or a hot 5. Like, it's hard. The track Far Away for me was really great when it started out. It opened up like some early 2000s B2K Diddy type instrumental shit. I was in my vibe, I was in my bag, I was out here relaxing, and then Meechy Darko comes in.
My tongue in the mouth.
Michi kills any kind of sensuality or sexuality this track was originally going for with his voice, and lines like "her pussy so good, I was gonna tattoo her name on my dick." What are you doing, sir? Michi Darko is one of my favorite rappers, just in general. Erick sounds like fucking Mickey Mouse on the pre-chorus, and Joey and Nyck just don't do enough with their verses to justify this track. One of my biggest issues with members of Pro Era, The Underachievers, and Flatbush Zombies is generally their fan base and the way they respond to any kind of lyricism that these guys bring to the table. Now, it's not to say that Joey Badass and Flatbush Zombies and the Underachievers are pushovers when it comes to lyricism, because they certainly are not. But I feel like they've been held as this standard of great rapping, where on this project it just doesn't show up. And their fan base will move the goalpost and say, oh, well, they're just having fun. Many times on this project, I can hear them going back into those generic trap influences that make other rappers less desirable, in my opinion. A lot of what built these guys' fan base was them pioneering their own individuality beyond anything else. But on a lot of these tracks here, it sounds like they're trying to drill themselves into the already popular hip-hop tropes and losing a sense of who they entered as. I remember specifically on this project, one of them rapping about how little effort was put into songs that were sung a lot. Clearly, it's a little bit more than just them having fun. And I have nothing against people that want to just make music to have fun. But when you hold yourself to a more lyrical standard than that of your more generic hip-hop counterparts, I would expect a little bit more meaning in what you say on this project. The lyrical content on this project can just be very bare, and I just wouldn't expect that coming from a group that's hailed as one of the best lyricists in the game. Despite my love for a track like Coast and Clear, it's easily something I feel Pierre Bourne would have done for Playboi Carti, just with way more interesting production. And I know this project doesn't have to mean anything crazy, but with the references to Capital Steez on the cover, I expected something with a little bit more depth. I feel like with this album, all they've done is emphasize more of their weaknesses than their strengths. Separately, they have a ton of great albums. Flatbush Zombies with Better Off Dead and Vacation in Hell. Joey Badass with 1999 and Before the Money. The Underachievers with Evermore, The Art of Duality. Even Nyck, Caution, and Kirk Knight have a project, Nyck at Night, that was pretty good that came out in 2017. But putting them all together forces them to dim their own lights and become what essentially already exists in the landscape but is done better by other artists. That's not to say this album is bad by any means. I really like it, but there's a lot that I just can't tolerate it coming from a group like this. I'm sure their diehard fan base is gonna love it regardless and see absolutely no flaw or issue in it. While there are a ton of good tracks on this project, there are tracks that just emphasize how much more the group I feel needs to work on in order to develop their own individuality, as opposed to unintentionally sounding like what already exists, but just to a lesser degree. Thank you for watching. It's been Shawn C, BeastCoast, and I'll see y'all next time. Let me know how you felt about it in the comment section down below, and I'm out. Peace.